So as I was speedrunning every Mario level ever, I found this one that was played 6.3 million times. The world record time on this level was pretty optimized, but I was able to find a shortcut and some other time saves that allowed me to steal the record. But the beginning of the level is just doing precise jumps off of P-switches and having tight movement. After going through this pipe, I quickly jump off these ice blocks to barely make it up top. I do a few tight jumps across the gaps, and then here I hit this vine block, get some speed going to the left, and then climb up the vine, somehow avoiding the saw. That precise shortcut skipped jumping off the P-switches on the intended path and ended up saving about a second. In this next part, I throw this P-switch to jump off of, grab this P-switch that I'll use at the end of the section, and then continue making difficult P-switch jumps. And here, I time a mid-air P-jump to get to the door faster. Finally, I jump off the last P-switch as soon as possible, and that's the end of the level. With all these optimizations, I was able to save 3 seconds off the previous world record time. Throughout the level, I make sure to avoid running up slopes since Mario loses speed on them, and there's some other small optimizations I found that allow me to beat the world record by 1/20th of a second, like boosting Mario forward by jumping into the switch, making the block push Mario ahead. In this next part, I stay on these conveyor belts as long as possible by doing tight jumps on the edges of them, and I skip this above section by jumping over here. And here, I take a tight turn around this corner, and then jump off the conveyor belt to retain my speed longer, and then I do another block boost like before. In this final section, I do a precise jump over the steep slope since they slow Mario down, and then I bounce on these bonsai bills to reach the goal. With all those tiny optimizations, I was able to beat the previous world record by 0.05 seconds, and I challenge anyone to optimize this record further. So you're supposed to jump into all these on-off switches to get through the level, but I use the spring I've been carrying since the start to hit the switches faster than normal like here. You're intended to bounce off the spring to hit the switch, but instead, I just use my spring to hit it faster. And here, I dodge the spiny instead of destroying it with another switch. Now, instead of bringing down this spring to jump on, I just use the one from earlier and keep this new spring for a shortcut later. And then, I just jump over the enemies and skip destroying them with another switch. So this next part is pretty straightforward, so I'll speed it up a bit. So the reason I've held on to this spring for so long is so I can do a shortcut near the end that saves the most amount of time in the level. You're supposed to repeatedly hit these switches so the shell lets down a vine, but that takes forever. So I use the spring to jump off of midair, skipping the section. And up next, I perform another shortcut by using a Koopa to do a shell jump and skip over the switch in this section. And then I can bounce into this spring and jump directly into the pipe, which leads me to the end. And that's how I stole the world record time on one of the most popular levels in the game. So this level uses a pretty cool mechanic with the horizontal thwomps. It kinda acts like a train that transports Luigi to each checkpoint, and I can continuously wall jump off the bullet blaster or spin jump on the thwomp to keep traveling. In this part, I drop 2 POWs onto the thwomp to use as platforms, and I ground pound the top one to avoid the fire bar. Then, I jump on top of the blaster to avoid the saws. I hit the switch to open the wall, and use the POW from earlier to enter the pipe. So in this next part, this thwomp train vehicle thing is much smaller, which means my jumps have to be tighter. And there's also a second thwomp vehicle that I have to manage, so I use it to jump over the saws, and then jump on the Koopa shell that I'll use later. And here, I kick the shell to hit a POW so I can jump on top of the blaster and hit the switch to open the path. I drop this POW to jump off of and then board it to make it through this gap, and then the POW blocks the thwomp from hitting an on-off switch, allowing me to enter the pipe. In this section, the thwomp is in the purple poison at the bottom of the screen, so it travels much slower than the last 2 parts. And since it travels slower, I have to stall my wall jumps using ground pound cancels and midair twirls, making this section more difficult. And here, this big thwomp hits a POW that destroys a muncher riding on the thwomp train, so I'm able to spin jump off the thwomp. Now coming up is a pretty hard trick. I have to preserve this POW while still wall jumping, so I time my throws to bounce down the springs while stalling midair so I can eventually destroy this thwomp. Then, I do a few more air stalls and ride the bullet blaster into the pipe. Now this final part makes use of the rising purple poison, so the vehicle changes speed drastically as the poison rises and falls. And I have to be sure to line myself up correctly before its speed changes so I can clear all the obstacles. Here, I get rid of this muncher with a POW so I can spin jump off the thwomp again. And here, this big muncher blocks me from going on top of the blaster. I spin jump off the spinies to activate this Bob-omb, and I do tiny wall jumps until I have to hit the Bob-omb over to an on-off switch to open the wall. Now, I spin jump off the thwomp until the big muncher gets pushed off, board the blaster, and wall jump to make it to the final pipe. And finally, I take a star to get a speed boost and reach the end of the level, beating the previous world record time by over 98 minutes. So this level uses the cannon box power up where it can shoot cannonballs to break the brick blocks ahead of me. They're used throughout the level to open the path and to activate on-off switches like this. I hit a switch so this Koopa shell can fall down here and to activate another switch that opens the path, and I shoot over here twice to hit another switch so I can enter the pipe. Here, I wall jump off the pipe for a speed boost and set up for this next trick. By shooting the cannonball just below this big block, the explosion activates it and creates a bridge so it can collect this red coin that I'll need for the key door at the end of the level. In this section, I have to hit these on-off switches repeatedly, so I let this bullet bill help me with that so the POW block falls down faster. And then I hit the POW block as early as possible so I can get through the door. Then, I do a precise stair jump and reach the goal, getting the rank 1 time. To get this star optimally, I jump slightly to the left to have enough speed to meet the star as it falls. At this point, I'm switching my controller into the Wii Fit balance board so I can pull off the ending. Here you have to do tight jumps to save the most amount of time. At the start, I do a perfectly tight jump around this corner so I can fall onto Yoshi as fast as possible. Then, I jump and tongue backwards to boost Yoshi forward. There's 25 piranha plants that have to be defeated, so I precisely spit out a shell, getting rid of all 4 of these piranha plants, and then I reuse the shell to defeat 2 more on the right while I line up this dry bone shot. Then, I slide down these slopes for speed until I have to tightly jump over this block. This last section is the hardest and most precise part of the run, and how I was able to save the most time against the previous record. I get rid of the rest of the piranha plants and finish the level, beating the previous world record by 0.019 seconds. So for this speedrun level, the goal is to have these thwomps hit these on-off switches so Mario can get through them. The only way to save time for these first few parts of the level is to time Mario's jumps through the blocks as tightly as possible, like so. Other than that, there's really only 2 hard parts to this speedrun, one of which is later where I skip a section by doing a midair trick, and then there's this part where to get to the next section, Mario's to jump about the height of a taco truck. So yeah, after that I do a spring jump to skip a section near the top of the level where normally you have to activate a few more switches. And after that, there's just some red coins I need to collect, and that's pretty much the whole level. This run was pretty fast, although it could probably be optimized a bit further, so I challenge anyone to beat this time.